Welcome to the Anthem read-along that I promised. This is going to help you as you start reading this book because it is so different. Get kind of into my mind as I read this book. Give you an idea of some of the things to write down. Now before we do this, I wanted to give you a couple of suggestions on things that are a good idea to write down as you read any book for this class, especially because our tests are open note, open book, open internet, all that kind of stuff. The biggest goal that you have is to make information easier to find. So as you go through, you definitely want to take note of the quotes that you like or the information that you think is important. But generally speaking, a lot of the information that you want to write down, at least for my class, is navigational. So what I would suggest at the beginning of each chapter, after you've read the chapter, put a little quick chapter title. For example, at the very beginning of chapter 1 of Anthem, some of the major events that happen are that you find out really just kind of about the culture of the world that equality lives in. So at the very top of chapter 1, I would write down culture of the community so that if I needed that kind of information later, I could find it. Other things that I would do is to circle the first time you meet a new character and then write it down off to the side. Anytime they switch locations or switch places or switch events or anything like that, write that kind of thing down so that you can find it later, especially when we mention it in discussions or videos. You definitely want to take note of that kind of thing. Some of the notes that I write down too are questions that I have or comments that I have about the reading. I'll put little stars next to things that I think are particularly important and make note of the switches. For example, at the very end of chapter 1, I think it's at the very end of chapter 1, it says, "And yet there was no shame in us and no regret. We say to ourselves that we are a wretch and a traitor, but we feel no burden upon our spirit and no fear in our heart." And I underlined that, and next to it wrote down Eve, because in the LDS faith, there's a little section in the Pearl of Great Price where Eve talks about how she knows that the fall was done for a reason, and that now she's rejoicing because of this experience that she's just had, and that reminded me of that. So I made just kind of that connection. So those are some ideas on things to write down as you read this book. Again, take note of major events. Just write down what it is off to the side so you can find it faster. Put a little chapter summary at the top. Circle places when you meet new characters. All of those things will make it much easier for you to find information faster when the test comes around. So let's read the first little page of Anthem together so you can get kind of an idea of what you might write down as you read this. It is a sin to write this, and I think actually I would even stop right there and pay attention to that word sin, because it's not wrong actually. Writing this is a sin. So your first clue might be, okay, well what exactly is this that he's writing and what makes it a sin? So you might want to keep track of that question. It is a sin to think words no others think and to put them down upon a paper no others are to see. It is base and evil. It is as if we were speaking alone to no ears but our own. And we know well that there is no transgression blacker than to do or think alone. So off to the side in my book, I would write down individuality is bad, because that's what it looks like he's talking about. It's a sin to write things that people aren't going to see. It's base and evil. It's a sin to hear things that nobody else is going to hear. So individuality in this community is seen as very, very bad. We have broken the laws. The laws say that men may not write unless the Council of Vocations bid them so. May we be forgiven. But this is not the only sin upon us. Now, here's another thing. As I'm going through this, I'm realizing that us doesn't necessarily mean that there's more than one person writing it. It seems as though when he says our ears only, a little bit earlier, to think alone, our ears, but no ears, but our own. It seems as though he's talking, or the speaker, I guess, I know it's a he, is talking just about himself. So when he uses those collective pronouns like us or we, it doesn't necessarily mean he's referring to a large group of people, which means that in his community, those words aren't used. So that's another thing to kind of pay attention to. It's another reason why this book takes a little bit of adjustment as you're reading through it. Very much like Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Let's see. We have committed a greater crime, and for this crime there is no name. What punishment awaits us if it be discovered, we know not. For no such crime has come in the living memory of men, and there are no laws to provide for it. It is dark here. A question I might ask myself there is, where is here exactly? Where is he writing this? And that might be something you might want to pay attention to. So off to the side in your book, I would just write a little question to yourself, where is here? And then when you find out where that is, then you can circle it. The flame of the candle stands still in the air. Nothing moves in this tunnel. Oh, well, there we go. We have our answer. So maybe you didn't need to write that down. But off to the side, I would write, he is in a tunnel, so that you know where he is as he's writing this. And I can tell you, because I've read the book before, that tunnel does have some important events that happen there. So you might want to keep track of that. Nothing moves in this tunnel save our hand on the paper. We are alone here under the earth. It is a fearful word, alone. The laws say that none among men may be alone, ever, at any time, for this is the great transgression and the root of all evil. But we have broken many laws, and now there is nobody here save our one body. And it is strange to see only 2 legs stretched on the ground, and on the wall before us the shadow of our one head. The walls are cracked, and the water runs upon them in thin threads without sound, black and glistening as blood. We stole the candle from the leader of the home of the street sweepers. We shall be sentenced to 10 years in the palace of corrective detention if it be discovered, but this matters not. It matters only that the light is precious, and we should not waste it to write when we need it for that work which is our crime. Nothing matters save the work, and our secret, our evil, our precious work. Still, we must also write, for, may the council have mercy on us, we wish to speak for once to no ears but our own. Our name is Equality 72521, which means, by the way, if you are following the guidelines I gave to you at the beginning of this video, off to the side you would write down Intro to Equality, and you don't necessarily have to write the numbers, but Intro to Equality would be an important place to know what he thinks about himself, what he says about himself, all that stuff, definitely usable. As it is written on the iron bracelet which all men wear on their left wrists with their names upon it. We are 21 years old. We are 6 feet tall, and this is a burden, for there are not many men who are 6 feet tall. Ever have the teachers and the leaders pointed to us and frowned and said, there is evil in your bones, Equality 72521, for your body has grown beyond the bodies of your brothers. But we cannot change our bones, nor our body. We were born with a curse. It has always driven us to thoughts which are forbidden. It has always given us wishes which men may not wish. We know that we are evil, but there is no will in us and no power to resist it. This is our wonder and our secret fear, that we know and do not resist. One thing that I was thinking about when I read this for the first time was trying to keep in mind that Equality's definition of evil might be slightly different than mine, because in his community, he's being told that there is some sin in him because of how tall he is. But he recognizes, he's like, oh, wait a second, I can't control my height. That's just something that happens. It's not like I wish I could, like by wishing I can grow shorter or grow taller or change anything about myself just by wishing it. You can dye your hair, but you can't make it turn a different color just because you want it to. So in this case, when he's talking about his definition of evil, you might have to kind of take into account that it might not actually be evil. It might just be his perception of it. So, just keep that in mind. And you might actually even write down off to the side Equality's definition of evil, so that you have that frame of reference, since his community's mindset is so different than yours. Let's finish this one more page. We strive to be like our brother men, for all men must be alike. Over the portals of the palace of the World Council there are words cut in the marble, which we repeat to ourselves whenever we are tempted. We are one in all and all in one. There are no men, but only the great we, one, indivisible and forever. We repeat this to ourselves, but it helps us not. These words were cut long ago. There is green mold in the grooves of the letters and yellow streaks on the marble which come from more years than men can count. And these words are the truth, for they are written on the palace of the World Council, and the World Council is the body of all truth. Thus has it been ever since the great rebirth, and farther back than that no memory can reach. But we must never speak of the times before the great rebirth, else we are sentenced to 3 years in the palace of corrective detention. It is only the old ones who whisper about it in the evenings in the home of the useless. They whisper many strange things, of the towers which rose to the sky in those unmentionable times, and the wagons which moved without horses, and of lights that burned without flame. But those times were evil, and those times passed away, when men saw the great truth, which is this, that all men are one, and there is no will save the will of all men together. So that's where I'm going to leave you to kind of continue on your own. But in that last paragraph that we looked at, where he's talking about the palace of corrective detention and the home of the useless for the old, there's a lot that you can kind of read between the lines about what kind of community he's living in. For example, you know for sure that when he's talking about wagons which moved without horses, what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about cars, and lights that burn without flame. What's he talking about? Well, he's talking about electricity. So you know, reading between the lines of what he's saying, talking in these kind of euphemisms. A euphemism, by the way, is a word that you use in place of something else. Typically something that you use to cover something that might not be very nice to say. For example, saying that somebody has gained a little weight instead of saying that they're fat, or saying that they've put on a few pounds instead of they're fat. Usually a phrase that's meant to cover something that would otherwise be impolite to say. In this case, they're euphemisms because he doesn't really know any better. So that definitely gives you a framework for what kind of community he's living in. They've actually kind of regressed, and well, not even kind of, they have regressed in the type of technology they have available. So that gives you an idea of the kind of world that we're looking at, what Quality is used to, and what is around him. And as you continue through this chapter, you'll find out even more, particularly about how he manages to get jobs. Now, if you've been with us since the Ancient World Packet, or if you've taken that class with us before, or if you've read the book The Giver, you'll find some real connections here to the ways that careers are given out. So pay attention to that section. Particularly because Equality 72521 has a lot of potential, and he doesn't get to meet it because the community won't let him. So if I were you, as I was reading through the rest of this first chapter, I would pay attention to the way that education functions in this community and how that's related to the world around you. But that's just my suggestion. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of chapter 1, and I will see you next time.